People who take massive war crime level dumps in public bathrooms but don't flush. Why? Story 1. I did this once because I had no choice. I had to be somewhere early for work that was hour and a half hours away. So I'm driving this whole time, before sunrise, drinking coffee, a little nervous for this work thing, and now I have to shit bad. I find a random Denny's and run straight to the bathroom. There's only one stall. I lock the door and turn to find someone clogged the entire bowl with paper and ass gaskets. I proceed to push out this ridiculous soft-serve mountain on top of the soggy paper platform. Like a McDonald's ice cream cone, but shit. The entire pile is above water. I had to hover and wipe just to avoid touching it. I had no choice but to top it off with a blanket of shitty paper. By the time I'm done, the summit is a good 3 inches above seat level. I could push that flusher 100 times and the whole structure wouldn't budge. Absolutely shameful. If anyone here is a Denny's employee in Northridge, California that had to deal with this, I'm sorry.
I would really love if another comment tells their side of this story, completely separate from yours.
Imagine if a worker saw the first shit, left to go get into their hazmat suit, and came back to see the shit had tripled in size.
Having worked in a place like that, with a similar situation, I can say with confidence that the closest thing we would get to a hazmat suit was a poncho made from a garbage bag and an additional bag to vomit in occasionally.
Story 2. Used to work in a small office with 2 separate bathrooms, one on either side of our office space. Each was a tiny room with a toilet and a sink. There was a guy who without fail, about an hour or 2 after lunch, would decimate one. Crime scene level mess, with the odor as well, and that odor would waft outward to the nearest cubicle residents, who complained daily. He never flushed, and his excuse was that he'd read how toilets create an aerosol effect when they're flushed, which sends a cloud of mist into the air, and he refused to endure that because who knows who else used that toilet. Which meant someone else got the honor of being sprayed with his leavings. Boss told him he had 2 choices, flush and spray Lysol generously, which truly does little to abate the stench, or use the facilities somewhere else. I'm sorry to say he chose to go to the nearest fast food place instead. To those valiant McDonald's employees, I'm so sorry. You did not deserve that. Story 3. Well, having had the office by the bathrooms, I can probably tell you. Mostly they just don't know that it didn't go down. Epic-filled bowls take more than one flush, and some people's mothers didn't raise them to check their flush. They just get up, hit the lever, hopefully wet their hands, and leave. Other people clog the toilet. In my case we had a plunger, but many bathrooms just don't for some ungodly reason. And even in our case, many people just leave because they don't know how, or just don't want to deal with a clogged toilet. Again, I blame bad parenting, probably just didn't get enough hugs as a child. Oh, and there were a few people that put fucking paper towel in the toilet. Those are the cat stranglers. You really have to watch out for them. Story 4. I only recently discovered our toilets at work are this way. In my defense, apparently the pipes are fucked up and it's a delayed reaction. I only found out recently because I was the one of a couple people in the office, and I was having a pretty bad stomach day. I knew for a fact that no one had gone in between my trips, and yet there was my shame in all its glory. It had come back for revenge, or to say hello, I'm not sure. It was not ready to depart this world, it was unfinished business. I did my deed, I watched it flush. The water filled back up, it was clean. Then, I waited. Sure enough, it came slinking back out like a guilty dog after eating trash. I flushed twice for number 2 now. That seems to do the trick. And this is why it's called number 2. Story 5. One time I was in a really crowded airport bathroom and had to pee after this long flight. I ran into the bathroom and every stall had a long line coming out of it except for one stall. I took my chances and chose the stall without a line. There was a shit mess everywhere. I really had to pee, so I aimed where the toilet was hiding underneath all the poop. As I'm peeing, a line starts to form outside the stall because the next people in line now think the toilet is usable. I start freaking out because they are going to think I'm the one who left all the poop. I finished peeing, opened the door and shouted, "I didn't do that." It was like that when I got here. I heard the next guy in line start swearing when he saw what was in the stall. I walked away with the idea that at least it's an airport states away from where I live and hopefully nobody will ever recognize me. Story 6. This is the story about my war crime shit. I was pooping in a stall at Union Station in Los Angeles. It was one of those legs to the wall, I can feel the separate layers within my intestines all being vacated type shits. It was totally thorough. I'm in a stall near the entrance to the public restroom. I can hear the footsteps and the comments of everyone as they enter. A boy and his father walk and it smells like poopy in here daddy or something along those lines. A few moments later old voice yells from a stall to my left, goddamn. Prison rules, motherfucker, give us a courtesy flush on that shit. At this point I'm trying not to laugh. This shit has been a non-stop experience. My anus is open and I'm like a soft serve ice cream machine down there, man. When it's time to wipe I barely have enough room to drop in the toilet paper. I left and never looked back. Story 7. When my daughter was about 5 years old she struggled a bit with constipation. It happens a lot when kids start school because they have to change their bathroom schedule to conform to their school schedule. Also most kids will do everything they can to avoid pooping away from home. Anyway, our pediatrician recommended giving her several small doses of Miralax during a long weekend when she had a Monday off from school. Not enough to cause an explosive blowout, just enough to really get the poop moving. After 3 days of Miralax doses, she said she had to poop. She situated herself on the toilet with a book to read. About 10 minutes later she called for me and said she needed help. I thought she needed help wiping, so of course I went in. She didn't need help wiping yet. She wasn't done pooping yet. Not even close. She was sitting on the little garbage can. Still pooping. Of course I asked her why she was pooping in the garbage can. She said because there's no more room in the toilet. I looked and sure enough, there was a pile of poop almost as wide as the toilet bowl and almost as high as the toilet seat. And the trash can was almost full too. It looked like giant servings of soft-serve chocolate ice cream. Fortunately, after a few more minutes she was finally empty. I ended up using one of their plastic sandbox shovels to transfer some poop from the toilet to a plastic bag so I could flush the remaining poop. I then squeezed the poop from the bag into the toilet and flushed. Then I shoveled out the trash can and flushed that poop. I put the shovel and trash can in a garbage bag and put them in the big trash can. I had had my fill of poop by then. I absolutely would have never believed an adult body could hold that much crap, much less a 5-year-old. Seriously, I don't know how she wasn't sick because of it. Parenting is not for the faint of heart. Story 8. This will get buried, but story time. I was on a road trip with a couple friends a few years ago, and ended up going into a moderately busy chain/buffet type restaurant to eat lunch. We are Canadian, and this took place in the USA, in the middle of summer. Along the way I discovered a flavor of blue Gatorade we did not have in Canada that I loved, and I had been chugging those bad boys, as I have a condition that causes me to get dehydrated easily. This becomes important. While at dinner, I feel that rumble in my gut that tells me it's almost business time, so I head to the bathroom. It's very nice and clean, and I have my choice of about half a dozen stalls to drop this deuce off. I do so without incident. I finish up doing my thing, and as I stand over the toilet, I notice that what I had left behind was not only a beast, but almost neon blue from this exotic foreign Gatorade. Pretty cool, but not something I would think somebody else wanted to see. The toilet, however, had other plans. I tried to flush the toilet, and nothing happened. I try again and again, and this toilet has decided to go on strike. I'm not this toilet's union rep, so I'm in no place to negotiate. The washroom is empty at the time, so I decide I have to just leave it. I depart the stall and walk over to wash my hands in the sink. As I'm washing my hands, another gentleman enters the room. Just as I'm turning to leave the room, I notice that of all the urinals and toilet stalls he could choose from, he walked right into the one I just defouled with what looked like a sentient blue alien deuce. Fortunately, since he didn't see me walk out of that stall, and there were many options, it could not be concluded that I must have been the culprit. But I admit I found it pretty hilarious that the least thing I heard while leaving the restroom was an exclamation of "Oh, what the fuck" from a stranger. I hope my giant blue turd didn't cause that poor man permanent psychological damage. Story 9. When we were in Greece, I took a massive shit at a restaurant in the middle of nowhere. There was a sign when I walked in that appeared to show a person wipe their ass and then put it in the garbage. I thought nothing of it until the bowl wouldn't flush and realized the sign was literally telling me to wipe my ass and put the paper in the garbage. Anyway, the bus beeped its horn twice and I knew if I wasn't on that bus they were leaving me. So there I am staring at this massive turd and a pile of shitty paper not flushing. So I said fuck it, I live thousands of miles away from here and need to get on that bus. So I basically sprinted from the restroom and paraphrasingly yelled sorry I took a shit and didn't throw my toilet pee away. I'm American, and they just nodded and said safe travels, like Americans showing up and taking massive shits to just up and leave was normal. It was in that moment I truly understood where the USA stood in the world. Crazy times. Story 10. Once, when I was around 10, I pooped in a public bathroom. To preface, this was a busy area at Disney World where you had to wait to use the bathroom due to how many people there were. This day I laid a log so large that I knew deep down it was meant to stay where it laid. Fate had a different plan though, and I found out that I'm not a fan of automatic toilets that day, and my 10-year-old self kept moving in front and out of the way of the sensor to flush. The toilet flushed each time, the war crime level dump didn't budge, until finally the toilet paper blocked the hole. While the back was turned, because I was a dumb kid who wasn't paying attention, I ended up having the toilet start overflowing and just barely saved my pants from the ungodly nasty shit water pouring out. The other people in the closest stalls were not so lucky. I like to think that they didn't get nasty shit water all over their pants, but this isn't a fairy tale. I was so embarrassed I had trouble ever flushing in public after that. Story 11. I stopped at a GA rest stop and had to go. It could not wait. 6 out of 7 toilets were clogged with multiple shits and or had shit all over the seat, so I used the only toilet remaining to take a massive bin on a road trip eating fast food for 3 days shit. It wasn't until I had wiped and stood up that I realized there was no way to flush it. The toilet had been broken the whole time. It was clear to me that my mountain of shame, piled some distance out of the water, would remain present for the next visitor. Embarrassed, I hastily washed my hands and left the scene of the crime, hoping nobody would notice, but as I turned the corner I watched as someone entered from the other side, opened the stall I was just in, and shouted off fucking gross. I couldn't disagree, but I wasn't about to stick around to explain things. I hopped in my car and never looked back. C'est la guerre. Just to spare you for a Google search, c'est la guerre is a French phrase for that's war, it can't be helped. Story 12. The last time I posted this I got multiple golds on another account. It gets sad, but it's funny as fuck. And it took place 6 years ago this week. It's long, but please read. There is some setup. Just read it. This is the last time I made my dad laugh. Literally. This story. He was scheduled for some tests at the hospital, and so I went to be there to see what the results were. It was an angiogram, so kind of a big deal. I woke up late and in a rush. I grabbed clothes out of the dryer. However, we had washed a down comforter and it broke apart and feathers were everywhere. Stopped by McDonald's and grabbed 2 Egg McMuffins, ate them on the way. Got to the hospital and immediately had to shit. Bad. Like, having to do the walk. And something was seriously wrong with my underwear too. I had not been to this hospital before, and when I finally found the bathroom it was out of service. But a nurse directed me to another. It was a single, handicapped capable bathroom. I ran in there, nearly didn't get my pants down fast enough, and when I did, feathers flew everywhere from my clothes. From the comforter that broke. Clumps and clumps of feathers. And then the explosion of liquefied egg and death muffins came. Saying it was bad is an understatement. Wiped and stood up to survey the damage. I was not prepared for the sight. There was shit and feathers fucking everywhere. It looked like someone shit out a goddamn chicken. It was a sight to behold, and I thought, what would I think if I came across this? I would wonder about what the fuck happened forever, and so I decided that someone else should have that honor. To come upon something that looked like an emu shit golem being born. And with that, I left it. I told that story to my dad later that night. He laughed and laughed. This was February 11th, 2015. 2 days later, on the 13th, my birthday. He died of a heart attack. Miss you, Dad. That's enough shit talking for now. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like and consider to subscribe. Thanks for being awesome.